In this video, we're going to look at the poem To My 9-Year-Old Self, and we're just going to explore some key ideas in relation to what is a generally quite simple poem. I actually think this is probably the worst one to get in an examination because the ideas behind it aren't quite as complex as some of the others in the anthology, and there's not quite the room to spread with some of the more sophisticated ideas. With that being said, there's lots of features that are interesting to the poetic form, so we'll kind of focus on some of those and maybe try to draw out some other ideas. What is essential in this poem is the use of imagery and the ways in which imagery is kind of reminiscent of some childlike instances and the ways in which the narrator reflects back on. But the most interesting idea to pick up on is the way in which the poem is in dialogue with itself, or certainly the persona in the poem is in dialogue to themselves, and that's really addressed in the title, To My 9-Year-Old Self. So you've got this idea that the whole poem is written really and addressed to one person, and that person is the narrator, the person who's speaking. So they've got this sense of the adult self and the childhood self completely in contrast and yet united in some way. But I suppose what the most interesting idea is here is that the narrator addresses that person as if they're still connected, as if they're still a part of them. And she really hits on this idea of being like 9, and the notion that sort of that is that brink between maybe becoming a young adult and having a sense of the world and not having such childish ideas, as if the first sort of 9 years of your life are very much rooted in some of the childhood actions that she mentions. And it seems that she's got a really vivid memory of her past, and she recalls ideas with an awful lot of specificity. So there's a suggestion there that she kind of relishes that time period when she was younger, and perhaps that's something that she feels disconnected to now, or she feels like she's lost some of that freedom, some of that infantile nature that she still finds quite interesting, or still finds certainly part of herself. So if we consider some of the features of form here, because that's the most important thing to remember about this poem, the irregularity of the stanzas, as with other poems as well, we can kind of suggest, again, this sense of narrative process, the idea that the narration is particularly important because the narrative voice is being driven by a stream of consciousness, or the way in which the poem is narrated is almost like this stream of consciousness. So the irregularity of the stanzas could mimic that thought process. Often when we're speaking, we're not conscious of the next thing, and it is irregular.